So we have Deirdre Cozier, I hope I'm saying that right, Senior Manager of Global Regulatory Affairs at Pharma Science, and Griha Mangru, Labeling Strategist, Global Labeling of Pfizer, Boris Jankowski, my colleague in Sciformix, and Trautman, who's the President of Intagras. So we would like to start this Q&A by hearing from Griha and Deirdre what the biggest drivers and challenges are with regards to global labeling management. It's really a two-part question. We'd like to hear about what's driving change in global labeling management and what the trends on the macro and micro level are, which will allow you to revisit how you work. Second part of this question is what challenges are you experiencing as a result of these drivers? Deirdre, we could start with you and then hear from Griha, perhaps.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay. So I would say some of the biggest changes that we're seeing, and currently I am with Pharma Science Incorporated, which is a Canadian multinational generic company in Montreal. By the way, it's not cold in Boston. Okay? If you guys think it's cold, come up to Montreal. This is summer for us.
I actually have to disagree.
Okay, well, we can talk. So prior to joining Pharma Science in July last year, I was with a large multinational brand company for 20 years. I was with Sanofi. So I've seen the global labeling process from both sides of the different industry sectors. And from a generic point of view, the biggest challenge that we face is the sheer volume of our portfolios. A lot of the brand companies target their products in a certain number of therapeutic areas, whereas the generic companies have much larger portfolios. And the big issue that we're facing is just keeping up with all the changes to the reference products for which our products gain their approval. Also with global expansion, as well as implementing different models in different countries. So sometimes the company is not the market authorization holder in the target country, sometimes we are. Sometimes the country uses Canada or Australia as the reference label for their region. So these also bring in a lot of different challenges. We have to make sure that there are agreements in the contracts with all the partners, the distributors, everything that in every country. And this is something that requires a lot stronger, robust processes that need to be put in place now than what was traditionally used in a generic model for manufacturing and distribution of products. So one of the things that we are doing right now is really re-looking at our entire global labeling process and really defining it from end to end, from the time that you want to do a change or you're launching a new product to getting it in all the packaging material, to getting it approved from the health authority, and having that iterative process throughout the life cycle of the product. Another challenge we're facing is for the very old products. In some regions, the reference product to which we gain the approval, the brand product has been removed from the market. These are sometimes very old products in which the market for the innovator product isn't sufficiently large to warrant that company to keep the product on the market. So when that reference product gets withdrawn, then who becomes that reference product? What label do we then have to match for certain regions? And for those products, a generic company can become the single source of that molecule. And that is where core labeling will really assist in keeping our labeling documents worldwide compliant.
Hi, I just wanted to add a statement that I work on both generics and innovative products, so I'll have to clarify when I'm speaking about generics and when I'm speaking about the branded products, it's not hopefully not to confuse everyone. A couple of the challenges that we're seeing, I think a little bit of what you mentioned, Deirdre, is everyone's portfolio is becoming diversified. But in the sense that I mean authorized generics, partner products, internally developed products. So you get to a point where you need to determine, are those, let's call them outside products, going to be a part of your internal systems? You know, are you going to track, let's say, Pfizer partners with AstraZeneca on a particular product? Is that label going to be in your system, or are you only going to reserve it for the Pfizer products? Harmonization among the health authorities. So obviously if certain health authorities in Asia are looking at what is happening in the US and trying to adopt some of FDA's thinking, then that's going to help us globally. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to add for that particular question.
Okay.
So all the challenges would create opportunities. So we'd like to hear a little bit about how these drivers are making you rethink your labeling strategies. Since labeling is largely operational, what are the areas of global labeling that can have operational excellence and efficiencies put in? In particular, if there are any best practices or solutions, tools, processes that you have used, you've implemented, that this would be great to hear about. Maybe this time we can start with you, Griha.
Sure. One of the things that we've done recently within the last, say, year and a half is we formalized a labeling strategy group. So the group is responsible for the Pfizer portfolio, you know, generics as well as the innovative products. And that's hopefully helping the organization on the labeling side. We also have our initial labels, so in the EU and the US specifically, as well as any major safety changes reviewed by an executive committee comprised of senior leaders across various functions, so clinical, medical, legal as well. And we've kind of put this process in place to build upon, you know, the system, kind of partner everything together. One of the challenges that we have in the back of our mind, and I think we're still working on how we're going to, tackle it if it comes forth, is the FDA proposed, I guess it might be a guidance. It was up for questions and comments last year around Q1. What would generics company do if now they're responsible for providing safety updates to their own labels in advance of the innovator making those changes first, based on the safety information that generic companies received? So it's no longer a generic company is following the innovator label word for word, with of course certain exceptions, but now you're receiving safety information and you're responsible. The onus is going to be on the generic company. So that's something we're thinking about, and unfortunately I think we should all try to think of how we're going to tackle that if it comes to fruition soon.
And we just basically follow suit with a kind of a copy-paste with certain sections specific to the product. Those days are gone. Health authorities are sending out requests for updates of labels on a particular molecule, and they will send it to the brand and to the generic companies simultaneously. This is something we have seen in Canada quite often in the last few months. So these challenges are going to have to force us to really relook at the process for maintaining compliance to our labeling documents, whether we are referring to a brand, the innovator molecule, or whether we have to do it in-house. So generic companies are really going to have to develop much more robust processes to ensure that, and to follow through in all regions. And especially, as it was mentioned this morning, there could be some regions that are dependent on some of the labeling in certain key countries, like the SMP in Europe, or the USPI, or the Canadian product monograph. So when things like that happen, how do they affect these countries? What are the regulatory requirements in there? often it was just a notify, it was an implement and notify, but with more experience, we're seeing even some of the smaller countries without robust regulatory oversight are requiring certain extra information. So all of this is really going to have to elevate the level of sophistication that generic companies have in their labeling process end to end.
So differences in labeling across geographies with respect to drug safety is an important concern. When you think about a core label versus a label that's in the market, how would you simplify complexity without compromising patient safety? And I'm sorry to ask you, really difficult questions, and it's I think throwing it open to anybody who has ideas on this. But how do you manage one label across multiple geographies? And for generic companies like Pharma Science, updates for these labels are less complex because the products have been on the market longer. Is that true, or are you managing a larger portfolio of products which makes it complex? I know for innovator companies like Pfizer, the complexities of introducing new products to the market bring other challenges. So how would you manage the complicated process when, for example, the reference product has to be updated in one country but not in another? Deirdre?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I would say that to me it all comes down to the process. It's easy at a high level, but then when you have to drill down, you need to understand all the interrelating dependencies of that label. So it's great from a generic point of view when that innovator product is still on the market and you have to follow it. So in certain regions, such as Canada, you cannot deviate from the innovator labeling at all. It has to have the exact same information, with the exception of some of the key, the product-specific information, and perhaps some indications that may still have patent protection. But other than that, you have to follow it. But as time rolls on, as I mentioned before, those innovative products can be withdrawn from the market, and then you're faced with having to assume that role. And the processes that you have in place might not be adequate to assume that responsibility. And as we're seeing, a lot of the big brand companies, their pipelines aren't producing as many new molecules and targets as they did maybe 10 years ago. Well, we're seeing that trickle down to the generic business as well, because if the brand companies aren't producing new products, well, they're downstream, and the generics will also be launching less products. So although at one point we had when we still do have a massive portfolio, the amount of launches per year are slowing down, yet we have this massive portfolio that is still on the market that must be maintained. This is where these things are really going to have to be addressed with the process. So at a high level, it's simple. We understand it. We know that process. But when you drill down to a micro level, all of those elements are really going to have to be discussed.